Argentina, the world-famous Tren a las Nubes, the cloud train, crosses dizzying viaducts and deep valleys. At fearsome heights of over 4,000 meters, the once highest railroad in the world travels past cactus forests into the now driest desert in the world. A technical masterpiece in the Andes. More than 600 years ago, the Incas came from the north over the mountains to the Valle de Lerma in search of fertile land. A few centuries later, the Spanish conquistadors penetrated deep into the fertile valleys of northwestern Argentina in the province of Salta. Until today, the inhabitants live off tropical agriculture. Tobacco, beans, sugarcane, wine and pink grapefruit are harvested. Just a 2-hour flight north of Buenos Aires lies the provincial capital Salta la Linda, nicknamed the Beautiful. Neoclassical churches and squares lined with cafes tell of its eventful colonial history. For decades, the Tren a las Nubes was the only connection to the world for the Salteños. These days, the commuter train runs here because those who can afford it live outside the provincial capital with its 500,000 inhabitants. The cloud train not only transports people, but also precious ores and agricultural products to faraway Chile. The story of the legendary railroad line begins in 1921. The steel strip on the route through Argentina measures 450 kilometers. Only on a short section of the line does the cloud train, the Tren a las Nubes, still run today. Shortly after Salta, they encounter the first technical challenge, a massive riverbed. At 260 meters, the longest viaduct on the route spans the Rio del Toro at a height of 23 meters. The River of the Bull is a trickle most of the year. Only in spring does it become a raging torrent. The construction of the line cost the lives of many workers. They came from all over America and Europe to lay what were then the highest rails in the world. Even today, the graves below the viaduct are silent witnesses of the railroad construction. Much of the rail line follows the old ranchers' cattle trails, which were used to drive the animals through the mountains to the other side for sale. The route was dangerous. Every year, many animals died on the way. With the discovery of saltpeter in the valleys, the construction of the railroad line began. The Ramal C-14 connected the city of Salta with the Pacific Ocean on the other side of the Andes. In 1948, after 27 arduous years, the ambitious project was completed. More than 600 men lost their lives, most of them in the numerous blasts. Some also strayed from the path in the dreaded viento blanco, the white icy wind. No one knows the exact number of victims. Nevertheless, the good pay and the adventure attracted many railroad workers in droves. Equipped with 400 shovels, 300 pickaxes and mule carts, they dug the stony path for the huge bridges and viaducts of steel and stone. The Transandino del Norte needed 44 bridges and viaducts to reach the mountain desert of the Andes. Maintaining the rails in this inhospitable region is costly and not lucrative for passenger traffic. Freight trains also rarely run on this line anymore. The gauchos Diego Armando Lamas and Joaquin Quipildor belong to the Pacha Inti commune, the Coya people.
Voy a cantar una copla para que lo cante cualquiera.
The songs of the gauchos are about approaching death, the dangers of hostile nature, and the fight against colonial powers. The two gauchos lead a modest but also proud and free life on the railroad. With their traditional dress, they recall the story of the brave Martin Miguel de Güemes, who fought and died in the Gaucho War for Argentina's independence from Spain in the 19th century.
Here it is. You fixed this on the side. I put on this sombrero. This poncho is very important because it symbolizes the flag of Salta. The same one was worn by Martin Miguel de Güemes. It is his legacy to the gauchos of Salta. Off we go.
The red ponchos were the uniform of the Gaucho army infernales. The color red stands for the blood that was spilled. Since the Tren a las Nubes no longer stops here, the gauchos lived their wild lives independently in the solitude of the Pampas.
Life has changed a lot since the train no longer goes this way. There is nothing going on here. Now the train only comes down here once a month for maintenance on the wagons, and then it's gone again. But it's really changed a lot, in that we don't work as much for the tourists anymore, because the train used to come by here regularly and stop up there at the station. Now I'm here in the countryside and I take care of the agriculture, the sowing. I take care of my animals. This is the little I have, and I'm happy with it. Yes, very happy, because this is what I have here on this earth. This is a gift from God. I'm really happy. And if I have it my way, I will always be here until I close my eyes.
For the two men, one thing is certain. No matter how hard life is, they will stay here. Brown, reddish rock formations thrown majestically along the railway line. In the Puna, the desert, grow the giant candelabra cacti called guardians by the indigenous people. According to legend, in each cactus lives a deceased who will eventually leave his prickly grave to avenge the bloodbath that the Spanish conquistadors have caused here. Primitivo Yapura, from the Tastil tribe, lives from his knowledge of the plants of the puna.
In the past, our grandmothers and mothers used these pointed needles for sewing and knitting, and they still do. They used to pull them out of the cactus. The wind here is very strong today. This is a different kind of cactus. We call it tunilla, and it's smaller. It grows along the ground and only survives if it rains. If it doesn't, it dries up. Our ancestors taught me how to use the herbs and how to collect them, and then I copied it. I want to preserve the knowledge about it. I hope that these wild herbs will be preserved.
Ojalá que no se pierda, que son hierbas naturales.
The rails run through an area known for its minerals.
Bueno, esto es un trabajo que hicieron hace ya.
These rails were laid 100 years ago to transport the minerals from this area and also for the people who lived here.
Y también en un tiempo para transportar los pasajeros que había acá en la zona.
Unfortunately, this has been abandoned. But sometimes tourists come by because there is the tren a las nubes, the train to the clouds. It goes up through the mountains.
Y para nosotros es el turismo que llega por esta razón de que existe un tren.
This area is very dry because it doesn't rain much here. It rains only in January, February, not in the other months. And there are very few native plants that grow here.
Y son plantas naturales de este lugar que son muy pocas las plantas que hay. Me voy a juntar jarilla para vender al.
I'm going to collect la rea to sell to people who use it to heal their aching bones. That's what my grandma taught me as a child, that you have to collect la rea as a natural remedy for bone pain. They bathed in it, heated up water, and washed their bodies with it.
Se bañaban con eso, calentaban agua y se bañaban el cuerpo con eso.
You can find these plants here because they grow only at an altitude of 3,000 meters to 5,000 meters above sea level. They don't grow at the bottom. They have many nutrients. This is due to the minerals in this area.
Primitivo stays here as one of the few people who have learned to survive in this inhospitable region. Just like the workers who came to Chorrillos more than 20 years ago, even in the early 1980s, people were still being hired to entertain the passengers of the Tren a las Nubes. Like Concepcion Sosa, who, with her family, accepted the offer to purchase land here at a low price and build a life for herself along the railroad line. Concepcion belongs to the Diaguita people. Like all other indigenous peoples, they were forced by the Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century to abandon their faith and convert to Catholicism. But most of them kept their faith in the gods of nature. Today, Concepcion prepares an offering for Pachamama. That's what her people call the mother of earth and time.
These are the herbs for Pachamama, to drive away the evil spirits. Since I do not have a ready-made incense mixture, I collect herbs in my garden and make the incense from them.
es para sahumar a todo lo que es.
This is to fumigate everything, the plants, the paddocks, all the fields and hills, and the water sources, to drive out the bad energies.
Y los cerros, las vertientes de agua.
I ask Pachamama that I do not lack grass for the animals, nor drinking water.
A los animales, el agua para beber.
Concepcion benefited from the times when the tren a las nubes stopped regularly in Chorrillos. But serious accidents happened again and again. Therefore, the railroad company has suspended operations. A fundamental repair of the tracks was too expensive, they said. To find a new job here is impossible.
El tren a las nubes
The train to the clouds has been gone for about 7 or 8 years. It no longer runs over our tracks here in the area of Chorrillos. Before, when the train came, it was a different life. It brought work for the people who live here, in this place called Chorrillos, where I have also lived for 20 years. I came here because I like this place. This place attracts me.
For Concepcion, this place, with its stony, dust-dry soils, is where she is closest to her gods.
Soy una madre creyente hacia la Pachamama.
I am a mother who believes in Pachamama, our Mother Earth. To her we owe our harvest. Everything we sacrifice to her, she gives back to us.
El fruto para poder nosotros solventar nuestros gastos, poder vivir.
The yield with which we pay our expenses, to be able to live, to have joy in work and strength. We ask her for healing. We ask her for blessings, from above and from below.
Ella nuestra madre querida, que nos cuida, nos ilumina día a día.
She is our beloved mother who takes care of us, enlightens us day after day. Night, evening, morning, from sunrise to sunset. Beloved Mother, thank you for everything we have here on earth.
According to belief, Pachamama is not only the goddess of fertility. Her figure resembles that of a dragon, and when she is angry, she triggers earthquakes. With her offerings, Concepcion wants to make the goddess merciful.
Pachamama, Holy Earth, Pachamama of the hills, Pachamama of the mountains, Pachamama of the paths, Pachamama of the waters, Pachamama of all the fields. Do not forget your beloved daughter, who I am here on earth offering you the sacred leaf that gives us life. Beloved Pachita, do not forget your children on this earth. And now we have lost the tren a las nubes, the train to the clouds. I have nothing to pay my expenses. I do my crafts. I do not know where I will go because I have no other place. The train doesn't come around anymore. When do you think it will come again? Pachita Mama, Holy Earth, if only you could bring it back. Pachamama of the mountains, Pachamama of everything.
For years now, Concepcion has been praying for the tren a las nubes to run again and bring back tourists.
Pachamama, Holy Earth, I ask you to heal me, not to abandon me, to protect me from all dangers, from all evil, from everything. I am sick, my body. Pachita Mama, heal me. Pachita Mama of the mountains. Pachita Mama, make me healthy and beautiful.
Alcohol and cigarettes are offerings to Pachamama. Apparently, Mother Earth has rather human needs. Concepcion prays for the return of the good old days. Whether the Tren a las Nubes will ever stop here again is written in the stars. From Chorrillos, the route climbs steeply up the mountains from an altitude of 2,100 meters to almost 3,800 meters above sea level. Almost 130 kilometers northwest of Chorrillos lies the old mining village of San Antonio de los Cobres, the beginning of the part of the line where the world-famous Tren a las Nubes still runs. Cobres means copper, which was mined and shipped in large quantities here. Today the mines are closed. Instead, locals offer handicrafts to tourists: wool ponchos, home-knitted socks and herbal teas. Before the construction of the railroad line, the people were self-sufficient and lived mainly from llama breeding and the sale of their products. But with the discovery of large copper deposits, a railroad line was urgently needed, as only freight trains could transport the valuable ores. This section was to become the highest railroad line in the world at the time, and many workers struggled with altitude sickness. Nevertheless, they persevered. At almost 4,000 meters above sea level, hundreds of men laid the rails, almost without tools, with their bare hands. The line was planned and built by US engineer Ricardo Fontaine Muri. The train line brought San Antonio modest prosperity for many years. An architectural masterpiece totaling 780 kilometers that connects Argentina with the Chilean coast. Today, San Antonio de las Cobres lives off of the tourists. There are not many of them, however. Most of them come from the provincial capital of Salta and have a 3-hour bus ride ahead of them. In San Antonio, they are allowed to board the Tren a las Nubes 3 days a week. Around 50,000 tourists come every year, despite the steep price of 70 euros. But today they have to wait a long time. The old diesel locomotive is on strike. The passengers should come back in 3 hours. Until then, the locomotive will be repaired, so they say. The train drivers are working flat out to find the fault. The tourists are getting impatient. Just a few years ago, a train derailed. This is another reason why it is strictly forbidden to talk to the two drivers during the ride, although the men are so proud that tourists come from all over the world to ride their train. The diesel locomotive was built in Argentina over 40 years ago. Breakdowns are part of everyday life for Luis Alanis and Andres Dominguez.
There are faults everywhere, and every machine is sometimes defective. Every car is sometimes damaged. Our locomotives are very old, from 1978, 1979, and until today we keep them running. A lot of people work on them, and thanks to them, they still work. These are machines that we can still use today. The train is a landmark for our area, where we work, which is an honor for us. It is what represents us above all. Apart from the climate, the cold, there are many things that affect us. We like operating these insane machines. For us, it's impressive. No more. We just have railroad blood in our veins.
After 3 hours, the passengers can finally board.
Vamos a seguir 2 vagones, por favor, y es el vagón 6.
It takes about 30 minutes to drive from San Antonio Los Cobres to La Polvoría Viaduct. Train manager Martin Yaguado is on board every trip. He makes sure there's enough water on board. This is essential for survival in the dry Puna Desert in case the train breaks down. Dragon of the Cordilleras is the name given to the cloud train by old people who still remember the days when it used to be powered by a puffing steam engine. Since 1977, diesel locomotives have been pulling tourists from San Antonio up into the mountains, and sometimes actually up to the clouds, hovering beneath the viaducts and resting on the peaks. In winter, the way is clear into the perfect turquoise blue of the sky. The first viaduct crosses the river of the same name, San Antonio de los Cobres. From here onwards, the line is one of the 3 highest railroad lines in the world. It leads through untouched nature and over spectacular mountain ranges, but it is not for the faint-hearted. Few travelers know the dangers of this area. Landslides, earthquakes, mudslides. Natural disasters are not uncommon in this section of the Andes. Train manager Martin Yaguado knows many deadly stories about the plateau.
Hay que imaginarse, de hecho, que
One must imagine that great obstacles had to be overcome to build a structure of this magnitude. The construction of this line has cost many lives.
Y hay referencias muy simpáticas a propósito de esta entrevista. Me atrevo a decir que hay una referencia.
There is even a railroad station called Dead German, which refers to a German who long ago, before the train had reached these latitudes, perished while crossing the mountains in the middle of winter because of the low temperatures.
En medio de las inclemencias del tiempo, del clima.
And today, it is a railroad station that commemorates this unfortunate event.
East of San Antonio Los Cobres, in the direction of the Copper Mountains, there's a seismological station. Irene Perez and Juan Pablo Aguiar are responsible for safety here. The seismologists continuously keep a watchful eye on their readings. All tectonic movements that could be dangerous to the Tren a las Nubes are recorded. The last quake had a magnitude of 4.4. From magnitude 5 and up, the railway line can be damaged.
Irene, this is the sensor. It sends us the signal that it receives from the monitoring of this station. San Antonio de los Cobres. And here you can see last night's earthquake.
Exactly. The one in Jujuy last night, for example. Sure, that was a magnitude 4 earthquake and was also recorded by this seismological station.
This sensor is very sensitive. It is a STS 2.5. These sensors are used in other institutions to record nuclear explosions, or small explosions, or distant events. Careful. Very good.
Las vías del tren a veces se pueden ver afectadas.
The railroad tracks can sometimes be damaged when the ground deforms and changes morphology due to a seismic wave.
Forma o altera esa morfología.
For example, in the 1977 San Juan earthquake, the railroad track was damaged and bent due to the seismic wave causing permanent deformation of the ground.
This seismic wave, the permanent deformation, and there you see
the map.
There you see San Antonio de las Cobres.
Correct. This is the epicenter. This was an earthquake of magnitude 4 on the Richter scale.
Size 3.
No, that's another one.
But it's closer to our station.
Of course.
Can this also happen in San Antonio de los Cobres with the Tren a las Nubes?
It is unlikely that this will happen. Let's put it this way. This is an area with high seismic activity. There have been many earthquakes here, and yes, they often affect the ground. And if the ground is affected, then that also affects the rail track.
From here, you can see the station of the Tren a las Nubes, right?
Sure, that's right.
Under the watchful eye of the seismologists, the train rolls on through the Puna highland. The high plateaus of the desert rise up to 4,200 meters. The extreme altitude is exhausting for most travelers. At over 4,000 meters, oxygen becomes scarce. Even at 3,000 meters, many passengers already experience headaches and become breathless. One young woman is particularly troubled by the altitude. She complains of nausea, dizziness, and headaches. For these cases, the Tren a las Nubes has a specially equipped infirmary. 2 nurses and a doctor look after the passengers with oxygen tanks.
The lady who is unwell is Solona Sangue Dolce and comes from De Salto.
We'll give you some oxygen. What do you feel? Are you short of air? And is it difficult to breathe? Good. Now we're going to check your vital signs. We'll see how your oxygen supply is. 89, that's a little low. Open that up for me a little. That will help you get rid of the lack of oxygen. This is called hypoxia. It's not really a breathing problem. The oxygen will help you raise the oxygen saturation in the blood. That affects the head, the heart, the lungs. That's why you get dizzy. You get nauseous. You want to throw up. The oxygen is a cure. There's nothing better. Well, now we'll see how much oxygen you now have in your blood, whether the saturation has improved. It's better. You now have 92% instead of 89, and that's good.
Tirelessly, the Tren a las Nubes winds its way higher and higher, struggling its way through dozens of curves through the mountains. At over 4,000 meters lies the abandoned Concordia mine. Founded around 1900, lead, zinc, silver and copper were mined here. In 1986, the mine was closed as the mineral resources were exhausted. Mining came to a standstill. Now, tourism is meant to create new jobs. At the old loading station of the mine, the locomotive has to move from the beginning of the train to the end, because from here on, the tren a las nubes is pushed. For the locomotive drivers, the altitude is the biggest challenge.
The winter here in the mountains is harsh. We have to endure temperatures of up to 20 degrees below zero. We get clothes that can withstand the extreme weather. Sometimes it's hard because you have to get off the train in between. Then you're away from the cozy heating. Getting off, getting under the train, checking brakes, making sure the whole gearbox is in optimal condition. It's not nice to work like that in the winter, but we like it. Just like my colleague said, it's our passion.
With an average speed of 25 kilometers per hour, the Tren a las Nubes approaches the highlight of the trip, the La Polvoría Viaduct, a masterpiece of engineering. Excitement is spreading among the passengers. No wonder. The ride over the graceful viaduct is the most spectacular moment of the trip. Almost 70 meters to the right and left of the viaduct, the ride descends into dizzying depths, not for the weak-kneed. The longest pier measures 67 meters. The iron girders were shipped from Italy. The steel structure is 224 meters long and weighs an incredible 1,600 tons. It took 2 years to complete. Floating over the gorge on this viaduct is not a sight you forget easily. After the viaduct, the section authorized for passenger traffic ends. From San Antonio de los Cobres to La Polvoría, the Tren a las Nubes has covered just under 22 kilometers of track. From here on, only freight trains are allowed to continue, although the condition of the rail line seems precarious. The icy heights are the preferred habitat of the wild vicuñas, a species of camel. The village of Olacapato is one of the highest places in Argentina. Inhospitable, without drinking water, in a barren volcanic landscape at almost 4,100 meters. On its way to the Argentine-Chilean border, the Tren a las Nubes crosses the sandy canyons of the Devil's Desert. It's hard to imagine the tracks finding support on the subsoil. The hostile area is part of the Atacama Desert, where only people who are familiar with the conditions of nature survive. Like Edu Samaja Gia, he grew up here and learned about the plants from his indigenous ancestors.
This plant is called tola, and here in the Punya we are at an altitude of 3,500 meters. It is a very hostile place, where there is little oxygen, hardly any water. It's very difficult for organisms to thrive here. This plant survives with little water. The locals use it for firewood because there are no trees in the area. And it's the only thing you can use it for. And around here is Tola Grande. That's where the name of this plant comes from. There's hardly anything growing here, and that makes it difficult for life to develop here. There's also very few animals here.
The smoke of the tola bush is also considered by the locals to promote labor, ancient knowledge that helps people survive in this wasteland.
In this region, you have to be able to live under very harsh conditions. For that, you have to be born here. People who come from somewhere else can't cope with these conditions at all.
In this inhospitable area lie the turquoise ojos de mar, the eyes of the sea. Their water is 4 times saltier than seawater. The bizarre saltwater holes got their name from the indigenous people. Scientists have found microorganisms in it that could play a role in biotechnology. The rails brought workers and goods to this abandoned stretch of land for good reason. Without fresh water, no natural flora and fauna could grow. Today, barely more than 100 people live here, cut off from the world and dependent on the handful of residents who can afford a car to drive 6 hours across the desert to the nearest supermarket. Only a few descendants of former railroad workers defy the harsh living conditions. They belong to the Coya people who live in northern Chile and northwestern Argentina. Mario Aloncay was born in Tola Grande, the son of a miner and railroad worker.
Esta casita son casa del ferrocarril, son construidas por allá por la
These cottages are railroad houses. They were built here in the 1960s. Before that, there were other houses made of other building materials. This one is built with railroad ties. That's what holds the tracks of the rails together. That's why the houses here look like this. They're connected with mortar. They have no supporting columns, no iron, nothing. They're just ties. And as you can see, they're stacked staggered, and they were only delivered for the railroad personnel. This village was created by the railroad. It was practically created by the railroad and mining. It was actually artisanal mining in the past, not like mining nowadays. That's the history. And now we live here, in a village that had its heyday and then died, and now is about to be resurrected.
At the old train station of the city, the minerals used to be loaded and transported by train to Chile. This has long since ended.
My grandfather, my parents all came from the province of Catamarca to find work here. And then they worked in the onyx quarries of Arica. There are about 10 quarries where they extract onyx in different colors. My father stayed here and later had the good fortune to join the railroad. New
mines give the inhabitants hope for the future again. so that the next generation can live here as well.
This is onyx stone. This is what was transported by rail. There are still traces of it here, remains of the broken stones that were brought by trucks from the Arita quarry at that time. There were several quarries there. The stones were brought here to Tola by truck and then loaded onto the railroad cars and taken to the various destinations where they were used for arts and crafts or construction. And then all the mining, especially the sulfur mine, which came after the onyx and the rock salt, the iron, the sulfate and all that. Well, all this was transported by rail, not like today with trucks, but everything was transported by rail. We even still have part of the wooden cattle wagons, because the animals were also transported from here, from Salta, Argentina to Chile. So that was the whole meaning of the railroad. At that time, in the heyday of the railroad, there were 4 freight trains a day.
Mario believes in the future of Tola Grande. He hopes that the Tren a las Nubes will once again run to the border with Chile. Silence still lies over the tracks in Tola Grande, and a bitterly cold night descends on the hamlet on the edge of the desert. From the spectacular La Polvoria viaduct, the rail line runs nearly 400 kilometers through the Sala de Poquitos to the sleepy town of Tola Grande. From there, the Ramal C14 tracks lead to the Sala de Arizaro, the second largest salt desert in Argentina and one of the largest in the world. The soil here consists of salt crystals and sediments. Strictly speaking, the Sala de Arizaro is a huge salt lake. In the Kunza or Atacamena language, the name means sleeping place of the vulture. The mountains in the distance are so-called yardangs, which form in wind-dominated landscapes when soft rock is weathered and abraded by strong winds. Those who travel here with the four-wheel drive are in most cases being taken to work in the mines by professional drivers. At an altitude of almost 4,000 meters lies the new Lindero mine. Since 2018, gold has been mined with the help of enormous earth-moving activities. In 2021, almost 3 tons of the precious metal were extracted. Based on scientific research, the entrepreneurs expect gold deposits for the next 13 years. Over 300 people work and sleep here. Their shifts change on a weekly basis. The crumbling houses of the former workers in the quarries still bear witness to the wealth of the mineral resources, and of ancient times when precious minerals, such as onyx, were a magnet for adventurers. It's not only the continuing demand for precious raw materials that attracts people to this area, but also the fascinating landscape. Within sight of the mine is the enigmatic Cono de Arita, an almost perfect volcanic pyramid of salt and black lava, a sacred place for the locals. A perfect natural cone with a height of about 200 meters and a diameter of 800 meters, the Cono de Arita is one of the most amazing natural formations in Argentina. The Tren a las Nubes has covered almost 400 kilometers on the Ramal C14 route and overcome more than 2,000 meters of altitude. The traveled section of the railroad is a testament to the dream of conquering the world by rail. What once seemed lucrative and audacious is now a monument to the brave men who put their lives on the line for this endeavor. Today their goals are a little different, but still big. A night train from which travelers can admire the shining stars in the clear night sky from a sleeping car on one of the world's most dangerous railroad lines.